So now I would like to show you some settings within WordPress that are going to allow you to kind of change and modify the way some things happen and make it a little bit easier to work with or customize or, well, do a variety of things as you'll see. So right now I'm in the dashboard and I'm going to come over here to settings. If I just click on settings, it's going to take me to the general tab. But you'll notice that I have several others, and when I pull over settings from the dashboard, it shows that drop down menu. So let's take a look at what these are. So under the general settings, we have things like our site title. This is going to be what your website is known as. My site, the most awesome site, whatever. The tagline is kind of just like, if you think of your site title as like a name of a company, your tagline is that little catchphrase that people use. So if you think of like Nike, you instantly think of just do it. That's the tagline. You want to create a tagline for your site. You can put it there. You can also leave it blank. You have a WordPress address and a site address. Those are almost always going to be the same. In fact, we're not going to worry about that being different because 99.99% of the time it is the same. So don't worry about that. There is a link there that you can click on if you need to have it different for some reason, but that's kind of rare. There's an administrative email address that you can check there. Then we have a link on membership, which is going to tell us, can just anybody register? And sometimes you want that for a site, especially if you're doing a membership type of site or kind of a social outreach. We want people to get involved. Do be careful, though, that some people will wind up automatically kind of spamming you through the use of bots and stuff like that. So if you do that, you probably want to let the new user default role be subscriber, which is the default. I'm going to scroll real quick, and I wanted to pull up a couple more things. Number one is, what is the default site language? Now, this is a drop down. There's a lot of languages that WordPress supports. You'll notice that even there's different versions of English. And this is all done through an internationalization standard. That way, if you are, for example, maybe a default Spanish speaker or German speaker or French speaker or any one of those other languages, you can have the interface and the site be in that language. Now, it will not translate your post for you. So don't think that you can write them in English and have them translate into French or into Italian or something like that. This is going to be more for things like your interface and things like where you see comments and how many posts and a variety of different things like that. You have the ability to set a time zone, and this uses what's known as UTC, or Coordinated Universal Time, but you can come through here and pick a time zone. Now, if you're not sure how many hours plus or minus you are, notice this is a huge long drop-down list, and the reason why is you can also find things like if you're in Antarctica or Arctic area or Asia, you can find cities that would fit for you. Notice that you have them also for even places like the Atlantic and Europe. You have America, which is going to handle both your North and South American continents. So you can come in here and, for example, if I wanted to pick New York, I would simply scroll down to where I find New York and select it, and it will automatically update this for me. I have a date format, and by default, it shows the whole month name, the day, and the year. You can see some different options that are by default. You can also choose a custom. And you might say, well, how does that work? Well, this is done based upon a PHP standard. So if you go to php.net, you can look up the date object and figure out how to format and create your own completely custom date format. This also works the same for your time format. So by default, it's hour, minute, and then PM or AM in lowercase. You can choose to be uppercase. You can choose to use 24-hour time, etc. If you're not sure exactly where that link is, there is right here a link at the bottom which will let you know about formatting information as well. Finally, you can choose the week starts on and choose from the drop-down menu. And you can choose either Sunday or Monday. Those are your two most common ones. But you could, if you wanted to, pick Wednesday or Friday, and you are allowed to do that. Now, I typically, and this is just me, I typically pick time zone New York as I'm in that time zone. I leave the default date format. I choose uppercase for AM and PM, and I choose for my weekday to start on Sunday. That's just personal preference. You have all the flexibility in the world. Once you're done with that, you can scroll down just a little bit further and click Save Changes. You'll notice you get a little bar that says Settings Saved. And then you can go and either make further changes or go to a different setting or someplace else. Let's look real quick at writing and reading, however, before we move on. So when you click on writing, you'll notice a couple of things right off the bat. First is a default post category and default post format. Now, your post category, you're able to create categories, and we're going to look at that in the future. And all your categories are going to appear in this dropdown. Right now, we don't have any, so it's just showing uncategorized. The post format typically is done in your theme and lets you know what types of post formats that you can have. This is going to depend based upon what type of thing is your site doing. So if you have a website that's just about quotes and stuff, you might pick your default to be a quote type. Or if you were a photographer, you might choose to do images or gallery as a default for your post type. So that way you can just create a post and, oh, this is an image themed post, or this is a gallery based post. And it's designed and kind of stylized to help you with that. You have the ability to post via email. And this is a little bit different, but if you set this up, and you might need to check with, for example, with your hosting company on how to do this, but if they have a mail server and they can have WordPress then log in periodically and check. And what happens is you can send an email to that address. And then if you have that email with that address, it will come up and say, oh, I'm going to create a post based upon this. So this makes it really helpful if I was out of town, for example, and I want to post, but I didn't remember what my login was. I could easily create posts on the road just by sending a couple of quick emails. So it has some simplicity in that, but it's not used as much anymore, especially since WordPress has an app for your phone, and you can link it to your WordPress site and create posts from there. Once you're done with that, you can click Save Changes if you need to. We didn't make any changes, so I'm going to move right on to reading. Reading has just a couple of options that you're going to look at. For example, your homepage displays, and you're going to see this a couple different places. It's not only set here in settings, it's also set under appearance, as we'll see in the future. But for example, number one, I can set it to be my latest post. So my latest post can be, for example, if I'm doing a blogging type of site or a news type of site, and I want to have the most recent information in front of people. That works great. Or I can choose a static page, and I can build a page out and say, I want this page to be my home page. So I've created numerous websites. A lot of times we do it based upon a static page because it's a host website, and we want to keep that the same. And then we will have other blog posts for news type articles or, company updates or a variety of different things like that. When I do that, however, I need to know how many blog posts do I want to show at most per page. And so this is 10. So if I have 8, it only shows me 8. If I have 33, it's going to show me the last 10 until I click on the next page. And WordPress has built into it the ability to go to previous or forward if you're not on the most recent page. And so it's going to show you at most 10 at a time. Likewise, the syndication feed, and this is more for if you're using RSS news feeds, but it can be used for a few other things, and other people will tie into these services. Shows how many articles do you want to list there. When you post something in the feed, you have an option to either show the full text, that's everything, or just a small summary of what's being displayed. Both of those are acceptable. If you want to learn more about it, they provide a link directly there for you so you can go and find out more. The last option is something you typically don't see checked, and by default it's unchecked, and that is to discourage search engines from indexing your site. Now, typically you want search engines to index your site. It's going to take them time to, especially if your site is small, they don't put a lot of weight in it, but typically you want them to. Now, this doesn't force them not to. The search engine itself has to honor this request. But in our case, we are going to click on that box to discourage them, and it just simply puts a special tag inside the web page that says, please don't look at this, please don't keep going further. And you might say, well, why would I do that in this case? And there's two reasons why. Number one, this is simply a demonstration website for these videos. So there's not going to be content here that I want search engines to go out and find and look at and start using. It's not that type of site. The second is, especially when I'm preparing a site, a lot of times I will have that checked because it's not finished, it's not ready, and I don't want them to necessarily see something that isn't completed. Real easy to make those changes. That's a checkbox. You can click on it and change it back, and that's actually the default unchecked. I'm going to leave it checked because I do want it to be that. And then once again, I click on Save Changes, and it will save any changes that were made. In our next video, we're going to look at the last 4 sections under our settings.